The Depth to Delve Deep by Rote Writer. Chapter 57 Avalon. Ah, Avalon, the promised land, where King Arthur rests in peace after returning to heal his mortal wound. He will rise again as it is storied. Rote learns about the legend of Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table long before he ever entertains the idea of traveling abroad. His childhood is filled with chivalrous characters he's identified with. The one above all is Aragorn, from the Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien. Rote models his life in the manner of a man born to be king. And to become a king, he must pass through tests of courage to claim the crown. To arrive in Avalon now, after the troubles, he's tempered his is tantamount to claiming his crown. He's conquered the conditions and predispositions he's been saddled with, and now can ride high on his white horse and say, "Hey, how's it going? It's going to be all right from now on." Here in Avalon, a name affectionately affixed to the town's real name, Glastonbury, he's found his ground. Rote learns in the old tongue, Glastonbury is written Yinis written, Isle of Glass. Long ago, the entire area is flooded, save for a few hills seen as islets. So seen, one reflects on an isle of glass, before the Romans and those after irrigate the land. Off the bus and on dry land amidst the mist of Avalon, Rote walks along Magdalen Street, which becomes High Street at the Marketplace Junction, forming the axis of the entire borough. He sees a Gothic-like monument in the middle of a public square based in pavers. It's Market Cross. It marks the meta-center of the metaphysical municipality. He walks the length of the two main streets. Rote returns to where the bus drops him off, found in a tiny turn within a parking lot serving Glastonbury Abbey. He's pleasantly surprised to find a pound coin in his pocket. He sees a minibus about to bring tourists to the start of the path. It twists and turns up the haunting hill, hovering over Glastonbury, tagged as the Tor. He boards the bus. After seeing it on the way in, his sights are set to stay there for the night. The bus driver is ever so accommodating. He lets Rote off at the base by the back of the Tor. He lets him leave his two blue bulging bags on the bus. This allows him to traverse the Tor and ponder its possibilities as a place to sleep. The driver of the Tor tour bus mentions to Rote that he comes by every 15 minutes or so with different groups of tourists, and if he times it right, he can pick up his bags from the safety of the bus a little later. Rote really doesn't want to lug those things around any more than necessary, so he says, "Thank you." He agrees to meet him a bit later in the afternoon. Rote begins the trek up to the tip of the Tor. He recalls what the driver tells him on the way up, about a fellow a few years back who spends well over a year camping atop the Tor in Tokyo, or at least in hopes of reaching such wuthering heights. At that time, the nut atop the Tor touches a few nerves down below, much to the grins and chagrin of the locals, who see their town attracting every nutcase from the world over. To them, it's just Glastonbury, not Avalon. It's a hot afternoon, and that in comparison with the many cold and wet nights he spends at the base of Old Sam Shiver. By the time he makes his way up the meandering maze glazing Glastonbury's Tor, he's sweating. There atop the Tor, the wind begins to blow, though it's surely not so down below. The height of the Tor isn't very high. The Tor is just at the right height of a very low airstream that gusts nonstop, daytime or nighttime, all year. It's a hill amidst the mountainous Mendips in the horizon. The Tor remains above its domain, as do the two adjacent hills juxtaposing the borough, Weary Hall Hill and Chalice Well Hill. Rote holds a smoke. He looks around the wonderful view of the area aloft the Isle of Avalon proper. He decides he can wing it for the night atop the Tor. He's sure to find somewhere secluded. He doesn't want to be disturbed. Meanwhile, it's still mid-afternoon and people are milling about there, so he puts his plan on hold until much later in the evening. He tours the top of the Tor like any tourist. The hilltop is completely barren save for a bell tower, a belfry without a bell, or the rest of what's once an old church christened as St. Michael's. Rote learns that terrestrially, the Tor is considered by some to be the gateway to the underworld, and Archangel Michael is said to guard the portal between the realms, and more. Before Christians consecrate the Tor in their canon, the mound resounds with the sounds of invocations. It's a Celtic place of prayer. Druids, shrouded in mystery, circumnavigate the sunwise spiraling ascent in procession to and from the top of the Tor. The earthen mound has ridges, 7 or so, circulating around the circumference of the rise of the Tor. He learns through many books and lore and legend that concoct and construe the mythical and religious relevance of the Tor. Then, through some sublime suggestion or sudden change of the wind aloft, Rote feels something eerie, like a phantom from the past. His mind is cast back in time to when a few arduous abbots and monastic monks are hung up there around the reign of Henry VIII. Chilled and thrilled, he spirals around and down the maze of the mound to reconnect with the bus. Upon that, he thanks him for harboring his 2 blue bags. The bus balloons up in height as he grabs them. He makes his way back up to the Tor. To be attendant atop the Tor is what's in store. He avoids suspicion by giving the impression to the people touring the top that he's a tourist too. He doesn't want them to thwart his plan to camp atop the Tor for the night. He walks down carefully to one of the first ridges encircling the Tor. It's a bit out of sight from where the tourists are milling about. He lies on his back and soaks up sun rays that have been non-existent today. After a while he gets up. He's tired. He can still see people milling about on the peak portion of the Tor. Rote cautiously circumnavigates the terrain, turns from the rimmed ridge he's on, staying out of eyesight from the tourists. Soon he's on the other side of the Tor, maybe a ring rung or 2 below. He sees another ridge rimming the right flight. It looks like a little corner clinging to the circular climb. He spots a trio of trees juxtaposed, jutting out from the Tor's torso. It has a semblance of shelter and some cover from any or all onlookers. Along with his blue burdens linked to his loins like bowling balls, Rote crisscrosses his way from one ridge to the next. Each ridge is like a downward tilted, leveled, layered circle, though not in the shape of a circle, only in so much as it circles the circumference of the Tor. He's confused and bemused by it all, for the Tor proper isn't exactly oval on top. It's flat, though convex somewhat. In his imagination, he pictures an egg frying in a pan, meandering its way from the eggshell. Then he pictures the egg expanding like bread, rising up and up, pushed by the heat of the pan like a volcanic thrust emerging from the earth's crust. As it does, it keeps its integrity, holding a mountain, or more, a hill, still stuck to the pan as in the earth. And as the bottom grows larger and larger, layer upon layer, it forms ridges around a receding fried egg foundation. It does so all the way round and down to the base, like an uncoiling snake, snaking this way and that way, up and down and all around the Tor. He's had it with his imagination. No clear picture can come of it. So he perceives he's on a pear-shaped paramount, with the stem predicating the highest pinnacle, and where the part of the pear contours into a shoulder-pierced headrest, Rote rests his. He descends down the layered level gates of hell, straight into a magical little spot where 3 trees poke out precariously from their perch. They position themselves on the side of the shelf of the ledge lent by the part of the ridge. He's beholden by this big, smooth, egg-shaped stone sitting there all alone, still attached to its hillside womb. More mystery to see, for he sees on one tree trinkets, talismans, tasseled like thorns, adorn a rosebush. He's beautifully betwixt by it. To be stuck on the side of that nook and cranny, so cornered. He lights up at the little landing a fire with fairies and prancing pixies. Without thought, he takes out a trinket he's had on him, the one he finds lodged in one of the sentinel stones lining aviary. After taking it from his pocket, he proceeds to wrap the coined yin-yang in a piece of cloth lying nearby. Now tasseled, he ties it to the tree with glee. The sun begins to set. Rote rolls out his roll and slips inside, and then slides on a slope. Only his burdensome bags burrow at the base of the Utah tree, stopping. The following morning, he gets up wondering if he's had any sleep. He hikes down the Tor, determined not to spend another night outside. He's been homeless with no tent save for an oversized garbage bag for too long. By all accounts, his appearance is appalling. His own stink is starting to wear on him. Weary from it all, he wonders how much more he can take. He moseys over to where a hostel holds his hoped for leaf clover. He hopes he can find a way to woo the manager, sort of sell his situation. His willingness to work is without question or qualms or queries, for his worries are worn weary. It's still early in the morning. Rote sits across the hostel, hunkered on his haunches, below the spired Glastonbury market cross, moored in the middle of the town. The hostel is yet to open. He has to hang around. After someone leaves the hostel early, he asks what time the doors open. 9. He leaves his 2 bags by the locked hostel door. He hikes High Street and sees a sign on the window in front of a very old building. Bartending staff needed. Goes back to the town monument, which replaced a much older one on Market's Place. He sits on the tiered octagonal base supporting the spired statue, pensively plotting possibilities. As the morning moors, the monument-like magnet starts to attract strange people. Some come and sit alongside him. It seems they do this every day and have done so for some time. One fellow is strumming his strings and singing a song so horribly that Rote wonders why no one with couth ever conveys how crappy he is. He's friendly enough, though, so to another fellow accompanied by his dog. All 3 look like they've been sleeping outside for the past little while. He's in good company. They chat about something. Rote isn't exactly sure what one fellow is going off about. Sort of like listening, or at least trying to tolerate an outdated hippie who has yet to be informed. The hostel doors finally open. Rote goes upstairs and asks any that come along his way, "Do you know where I can find the manager?" While standing by the locked office, someone comes by and opens it. As the privileged person comes out, Rote asks, "Are you the manager?" "No, but the owner will be by probably any time around now. Usually comes in around 9 in the morning." He says so after looking at his wristwatch. Rote asks the fellow, "Is there any way I can work for a room? I'm short of funds. I'm sort of screwed." And adds, "Is your boss the type to, like work out deals in exchange for accommodation?" "Yeah, I can see him doing something like that. Just sit tight and wait for him to come in, all right?" The allure of accommodation welcomes him well. Rote already feels fortunate to be actually sitting down on a very comfortable couch watching television while waiting for the owner. He may not have showered yet, but the creature comforts are already taking hold. Though, even by normal standards, the couch he's sitting on is not top of the line comfort. Rote's sore body nonetheless welcomes the pseudo-softness offered by the sofa. After weeks of lying on cold, hard ground, more often than not wet and ridged with roots, his present seat is soft and safe and secure. He watches the television almost as if it's his first time exposed to such technology. After a few minutes of being lulled into a false sense of security, he shakes his head thinking, "Don't just sit there. Think, this is it. I'm in a do or dire situation. Take nothing for granted. Gather thoughts. Think this out. Every eventual unfolding is now being forged." He needs a shower so bad that things better cover all his angles first. He has an ace or 2 up his sleeve. He'll leave nothing to chance. Perchance the ownership suddenly appear. He leaves his bags in the living room of the hostel and descends down the stairs and out the front door. He turns left. Rote walks maybe 2 doors down until he reaches the inn, where he sees a sign posted, "Bartender, apply within." He goes right into the inn. On the way to the front desk, he marvels. Wow, how worn the stones of the thoroughfare are. Through one end of the old inn to the other, centuries of feet form the flooring, and causing the deeper sloping indentations and imprints, horses and horsemen carriages. The floor is smoothed by age and time. He will marvel over this again and again. The receptionist in the inn of all inns, in authenticity and archaic acclaim, according to Rote, says after he asks her to speak to the manager, "The assistant deputy is here and will see you." Rote's not familiar with that particular term. I figure she means the assistant manager. He sits and waits in the part of history, an ancient, authentic assemblage. The inn is as old as the told abbey lying in ruins amidst the center of town. While waiting in the inn, he imagines the inn has stood the test of time, preserved probably by the spirits it serves. Through all the political and religious rages, people have poured ports and pine. The deputy manager comes out and gives Rote an application. He takes down his name and asks him where he's staying. Oh, I'm just staying next door at the hostel. You won't have to go far to look for me if you need me to work. Rote reassures his hoped for deputy manager. The assistant deputy seems a bit odd. He's obviously not British, maybe Nordic. This odd fellow has the air of another world about him, like old Odin, almost magical though not in a visible way. He has a strange presence. Rote looks around while the assistant deputy follows his eyesight. He needs to focus on the matter at hand. Rote shakes his head and clears his thoughts, thinking, shit. He knows how he looks. He's surely stinking like some sewer rat that just found its way to the surface. His face is furry, all fuzz. He looks awful. His confidence, though damn determined, decides to compensate any connection to his present condition to any possible perceived presentation coming being hired. Rote explains to the deputy manager, I have proper work attire, black pants, white shirt, and black shoes. And he does, thankfully, after lugging the items amongst others since landing in a foreign land. He also lets the odd fellow know that I don't normally let myself go this long unkempt. I've been camping for some time and I just haven't had the chance to shower and shave yet. He's not really lying. Homelessness is kind of like camping without all the gear. Rote's assured that a decision will be made soon. The deputy manager and the manager will hire someone later in the week, if not early in the next. Rote leaves the inn after thanking the deputy manager. He figures maybe, just maybe, if he pushes a bit more, he'll be the one hired. But how, with no place to stay? Only hope for a bed in the hostel. Rote knows he can't wait more than a week with no money. Goodness, he can't wait any longer. He's starving, cold, and tired, and desperately determined not to be destitute anymore. Rote returns to the hostel with one wild card ready to render and another in waiting. He attentively waits the arrival of the hostel owner up in the loft-like waiting area. It's a meeting room reserved for hostelers. The owner appears. Rote introduces himself, while in his mind he's contriving and construing causes to stay in the hostel. He explains the situation. I'm wondering if I can stay here for a few days. I'm on a list to start work at the inn next door. And when I start working, I'll have no problem reimbursing any rent I may incur. Also, I'll be available night and day, able to help out around the hostel in any way. I'm well weathered in all manners of kitchen, bar, and restaurant work. The hostel owner, having more than likely heard the story so many times before, never so sincere, says, no. Then, I've been burned before in similar situations, and I'm not about to be fooled again. Rote wields another wild card. From his pocket, he reaches and grabs for the keys to his SUV, a sports utility vehicle he leaves parked in the long-term parking lot at the airport before departing abroad. Rote lets him know he can have the keys to his SUV. It's a sports utility vehicle. Apparently, the vehicles aren't very popular in the west country of England, or for that matter, anywhere in the UK or Ireland, from what he's seen. For it seems rather shrewdly, Rote thinks, the English, Scottish, Irish, Cornish, and Welsh, probably continental Europeans, all prefer fuel-efficient vehicles. Rote can see the manager has no idea what an SUV is. Might as well have told him his keys are from a spaceship. So he has to pump his vehicle a little harder, sell its worth and wherewithal. They're very popular in North America. He says so repeatedly. Seems like he seems like he likes to hear a foreigner fend for his life. This is Rote's last card, and he plays it for all it's worth. Has he convinced the hostel owner enough? Ah, the silence ensuing is excruciatingly taxing. Need he say more? Has he said too much? Must he worry so much? Hell, yes. He's bloody homeless, however happenstance. Then the decisive moment. Can it be? Is he about to? Okay. Reluctantly, Rote gives his SUV keys. They're immediately taken and secured in the safe upstairs in the more secluded and private office. The hostel is an old building built in the 1400s, as the inn is a couple of doors down, though they couldn't be more different. The hostel has been modeled and remodeled so many times over the centuries, it's hard to tell if there's any authenticity left to its integrity, save for the spot it's built on. Rote's upstairs in one of the dorms when the manager comes back and says, I'll see if my chef needs any help in the kitchen. As the manager gives Rote the sheets to his bunk bed and keys to the dorm, he says, Can I see your passport? It seems the keys to his SUV will not suffice. Rote stops, placing the sheets on the bottom of one of his the bunks in the dorm. He shows his passport to the owner without actually handing it to him. He doesn't want to relinquish the only means of identification abroad he has. The owner says, I'd like to hold on to that as well. Rote responds unapologetically, adamantly, stating very simply, I can't barter with that. Anything else, sure. Without my passport, I have no way of proving my identity. Reluctantly, the owner accepts, though a bit taken aback by Rote's reserve in releasing his passport. It's common practice for hotels that elect to hold paying customers' passports. And Rote knows it, but he's like a starving animal. Anything he has, he guards to the death. Also, Rote has every right to say no, just as the owner has the right to say, okay, go. Fortunately, he doesn't, and the two become fast friends. After a much needed and much anticipated shower, Rote is refreshed. He walks out of the hostel, leaving his bags behind by his bed in the dorm. Oh, what a feeling to do just that. He's both exhilarated and exhausted from an extreme couple of weeks. He has no money, but at least a place to sleep for a night, perhaps a weekend. And maybe, who knows, he's hoping within a week to land a job. He returns to the inn next door, just to make an appearance. He wants them to see him all showered, shaved, and with clean clothes. He's hoping to overcome his first impression. The odd deputy doesn't seem to even notice or care. Never really takes much notice in the first place, being a bit odd too, eccentric in mode and manner. Nonetheless, Rote makes it clear that he's clean and comfortably residing just next door, if they should come to a quick decision in hiring him. As he leaves, he has a funny flirt with his former thoughts formed way before he even begins his odyssey to the promised land, Avalon. I think it'd be nice to work in a really old pub, moreover medieval. Funny, too, another thought comes, one that reminds him when he's roomed up in Edinburgh. It's about a topical conversation with one of the croons of the convent about Avalon. He can remember saying, where the hell is it? Well, it's a ways away from where the quest begins. Now he wonders if he'll find rest.